Well, hello, 1020 fans, and welcome to my week 2 video. I'm going to be talking with you about the paper 1 assignment sheet, and hopefully you already read through it from last week. But if you did not, or if you would like to follow along with me, go to Content up at the top of our Brightspace page, and then click on Major Paper Assignments and Related Materials in that left-hand sidebar, and then on the paper 1 assignment sheet. So for this first major paper of the course, you'll be choosing from one of 2 possible topics to write about, and your paper should be at least 3 full pages in length, so 3 to 4 pages long. So you may write a character analysis of any one of the main characters we're going to be studying in this first unit. And sometimes students ask, well, how do I know what is the first unit? Well, go to your course syllabus, and you can find it anytime by going to Content again, and then directly under Table of Contents you'll see Course Syllabus, and look at the reading schedule, and you'll see that Unit 1, Fiction from Subjection to Liberation, The Lies That Bind Us, begins the very first day of class. And it ends on the day that paper 1 comes due, and that's Monday, the 28th of February. So any of the main characters that we're reading about in this first unit are fair game for you to write about in this first paper in a character analysis. And so let's think about the choices that you have in terms of the characters, and I would suggest that you write about a character or characters, depending on whether you choose option 1 or 2 that we're about to talk about, that really resonated with you and that interested you, because again, if you're interested in that character, your writing will be better. So firstly, you could write about Ely in Night, and I realize that one's a bit tricky since Ely is also the narrator as well as the writer of this piece. It's autobiographical. So we do have to sort of keep that in mind, but we could write about Ely as one of the possibilities. You could also write about a very old man with enormous wings, and of course the main character there would be the very old man, the angel himself. You could write about Olaudah Equiano from the interesting narrative of the life of Olaudah Equiano. And like Night, Equiano is both the author and the speaker, the narrator in this piece. You could also write about that excerpt from Beloved by Toni Morrison. So the main character there would be the speaker. And we assume that she is sort of a collective speaker. She is Beloved. She is the grandmother of Beloved, who came over on a slave ship. She is the voice of all African women who made that horrific journey on the slave ship from their native land to the United States to become enslaved. So you kind of have to keep that in mind if you were to choose that piece as a character analysis. And then you could also choose from Jamaica Kincaid's Girl. So you could choose the character of the girl or of the girl's mother. And the girl's mother is the person who speaks through most of this, but we're sort of getting it from the girl's perspective. So those are your choices. And when we say a character analysis, if you analyze something, you're breaking down its parts to find out how it works, right? So think of these characters as real people. Real living, breathing people who have strengths and who have weaknesses. They're human, they have flaws. None of them will be perfect. And so if you're going to analyze them, you're going to think about what they say, what they do, right? What they feel, how they react to things. And so these will be the ways in which you conduct your analysis and the main points of your paper if you choose option 1. So you'll use the techniques authors use to develop a character as you're analyzing your character. What the character says, the character's own words that you're going to quote from, what the character does, so the character's actions and behaviors, the character's feelings, what other characters say about him or her, so the words of other characters and the responses and reactions of other characters. You'll use the author's description of the character's physical appearance, and you may or may not get much of that. And then you can use narrative comments, so any comments within the text by the author or the narrator that give you some insight on this character and what makes this character tick. I suggest you choose a main character, but I have had students who have written about characters that aren't main characters and they've made it work. So for example, in Night, I got some really good papers about Moshe the Beetle in the past that were very interesting, even though he's not a main character. But again, you want to think about, how much information do you have? Can you really get to a 3 full-page essay with this character as you're planning for the paper? So think about, too, the idea that character is always, always, always ultimately connected to theme. Character reveals theme, that underlying message that the author wants to convey to us about life and love and the human condition. And so think about how the character you're analyzing helps to reveal the story's main theme, that universal feeling or idea to which we can all relate, right? And also consider the following. How is this character enslaved? The character may be literally enslaved, like Ely in the concentration camp, or like the speaker in Beloved, like Alaudo Equiano. Or the character may be enslaved in another way, like the girl in Girl. The angel may be enslaved, both literally and metaphorically. And then think about, does this character enslave anyone else in any way? So the mother in Girl may, in a sense, enslave the girl psychologically, right? And this gives you another point to write about in your paper. This should not be the main focus, but it gives you a point of analysis to write about. The second option, you can compare and contrast any 2 main characters that we're looking at in Unit 1. So you want to consider what conflicts each of the characters is facing, how others view him or her and react to him or her, whether or not or how he or she is changing over the course of the story. And so in this option, if you chose option 2, you're looking at 2 characters and you're comparing and contrasting their similarities and their differences. So, you might compare Ely to Alaudo, or you might compare Alaudo to the speaker in Beloved, because all 3 of these characters experience literal enslavement in some way. You might look at religious ideas and compare the angel in A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings to the speaker in Night and his struggle with spirituality and religion as he goes through his difficulties. There are all sorts of ways that you could do that. So here are the important dates. Sunday, the 13th of February, you'll complete your idea worksheet for paper 1. And so if you've ever taken any of my classes before, you know that this is something that I do for my students. I give them some questions to begin the process of writing, which starts with ideas, brainstorming for ideas, right? So I give you some questions that will start provoking some thought on your part. So you want to answer those questions and submit them before 11:59 p.m. on Sunday the 13th. And to get to where you submit, you click on Assignments up at the top of our course page and you look for Idea Worksheet for Paper 1 and you follow the instructions there. This isn't timed. You can take your time in answering the questions and then just submit them when you're done. Monday the 14th, Happy Valentine's Day. Sorry, I have to give you an assignment. But on Monday the 14th, you'll complete the MLA template for Paper 1 exercise. That's the very first thing you should do on Monday the 14th. You could do it beforehand. The assignments for the following week always open on that Friday before the coming week. And so if you wanted to get a head start, you could do it beforehand. So basically, if you click on content and on course documents and look for MLA template for paper 1, you will see a template that you can actually begin typing into that I have created for you that helps you get your formatting correct, right? So your headings correct, your title, and that actually guides you through various steps of writing this paper. So it's a wonderful tool, and I won't be providing it for you at every single major paper, so take advantage of it this time, and actually type your paper into that. Once you have a rough draft of that paper completed, following the guidelines in the template, then you want to submit a rough draft. And that rough draft of paper 1 is due by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, the 20th of February. So what will happen is you'll submit that rough draft, and I will give you feedback. And by the way, I'll also give you feedback on the idea worksheet that you complete and submit on the 13th, on or before. So make sure you go back into assignments and look at the comments that I've made on your idea worksheet, because that will help direct your rough draft. And then be sure that you look at the comments, because I'm going to make extensive comments on this first rough draft. I won't do it anymore after this. This is the one and only time, because it's time consuming. Most professors will not do it because it's like grading the paper twice. And when you're dealing with over 100 people and you do that twice for a major paper, it's very, very time consuming. So most professors won't do that for you. I'm going to do that for you with paper 1, so that you will begin to get the gist of my grading process and what I'm looking for. And if you will take those comments and those suggestions and enact them into your final draft, you'll earn a much higher grade. But if you do not enact them, then every single time that I've made a comment and I've said, oops, you've got a typo here, because I'm going to line edit this paper. I won't do it anymore, but I'm going to line edit the first one. Oops, you have a sentence fragment here. You have a comma splice here. You forgot your thesis statement. I really feel that you should shift your paragraphs here. If you don't go in and fix the things that I've pointed out to you, then you're going to get points deducted for every single place where you made an error. So I'm really helping you out here. Make sure you look at those comments on the rough draft and then enact my suggestions into your final draft. And also remember that if you do not submit the rough draft by the deadline, 10 points are deducted from your paper 1 grade. And that's because we want to really instill in you the idea of the process of writing. That with a college level paper, you're not just working on something the night before it's due and just fly by night submitting it. That isn't the way college writing works. It takes time. It's a process. So the final draft is due on Monday the 28th, and you'll upload it again under the assignments tab. Look for paper 1 final draft. Specifics. This paper should be 3 to 4 pages long, so at least a minimum of 3 full pages. If it's less than that, I'll deduct points. So if you only submit half a paper, 1.5 pages, you'll get half a grade, and that's a 50, and that's an F. So make sure that you get to the 3 full pages. Obviously, it should be typed, double-spaced, 12-point Times New Roman font, standard margins. And this time around, you only need to document your primary source. So the text or text you're looking at, where you're analyzing characters. If you choose option 1, there's only 1. If you choose option 2, there will be 2 different texts that you're looking at probably, because you're looking at 2 different main characters with option 2. So this means you need to incorporate quotes into the body of your paper, citing them correctly in MLA, and also that you're going to include a separate works cited sheet correctly done in MLA formatting. So that means 3 full pages of writing and then the works cited sheet. So your goal, your objective in this first major paper is to write a careful character analysis of a character or characters, depending on whether, again, you choose option 1 or 2, from 1 or 2 of the texts that we're reading in Unit 1, again, depending on the option you choose. Your job is to think deeply about how the characters are brought to life, whether and how they're changing over the course of the story, how they connect to theme, all of the things that I outlined before. So, to create a successful paper, your essay should answer the following questions. And I don't mean this literally. I once had a student who took me literally, and when I got her paper, it said, I have selected characters and text from Unit 1. I have written a compelling thesis statement. I have checked my topic sentences. So, no, I don't mean to literally write this. I mean to ask yourself these questions and make sure you've done these things as you're writing. So, have you chosen characters and text from our first unit? Have you written a thesis statement that is compelling? So, for example, your thesis needs to say something more meaningful than the main characters in The Interesting Life of Alaudo Equiano and Beloved are both similar and different. Well, duh, right? We could say that about any two characters in literature or any two people in the world. Excuse me. So you need to be more specific. That thesis is too broad. You need to tell us how this is the case. You need to point out some salient, some important similarity or difference, right, within your thesis. Have I checked my topic sentences to make sure I'm making points of analysis rather than just summarizing what's happening in the story? So, what are topic sentences? Think back to high school and to 1010. Your topic sentence is the first sentence in each paragraph. And generally, that topic sentence is going to tell your reader what this paragraph is going to be about. And sometimes it's like a connector, a link, and a chain. It may look back to what you just said while pointing ahead to what you're about to say. So, for example, if your first sentence is next, the car breaks down, then the misfit and his gang come along. If that's your topic sentence, you may just be telling the reader what's happening in the story rather than actually analyzing, breaking down the character and telling us, here's what this character is like, here's how we know, and here's how this character reveals the theme, right? Those are the important things. And here's what the theme is. You've got to tell us what the theme is. Does my intro have a hook? So think back to 1010. When we begin a paper, we want to begin with a sentence that is a hook because it hooks or reels the reader in, making him or her want to keep reading. And with a formal academic paper, you may not always be able to come up with this fabulous, super creative hook because you're trying to keep your language formal. But still, you want to come up with something that starts broadly and that reels your reader in and makes your reader engaged, makes your reader want to keep reading. And so you'll see some examples of that in the sample papers that we'll be reading. Have I included the following information in that first paragraph, that introductory paragraph? So the reader needs to know the title of the work or works you're writing about, whether you're choosing options 1 or 2, the full name of the author or authors, the reason the text has meaning, and then your thesis, okay? So if we get to the end of paragraph 1 and we don't have all of that information, then Houston, we have a problem. So remember that. Have I remembered that short story titles are placed in quotation marks, not italics, okay? So you need to get that rule straight in your head. It's amazing to me how many students, even in a sophomore literature class, still don't understand that basic rule. And if you will memorize it, you'll never ever get points deducted on a paper because of it ever again. So do yourself a favor and memorize this rule. Shorter works, the titles are always placed in quotations. Longer works, the titles are going to be placed in italics. So if you look at the weekly checklist, but I think that I'm using italics there. I think the system allows me to. But certainly if you look at the syllabus, you'll see which titles are placed in quotation marks and which are in italics. So Night is a book, and we're just reading excerpts from that book. But it's the title of a book, a long work, so it's placed in italics. However, A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings is a short story, so it's a shorter work, a short story. So its title is placed in quotation marks. So make sure that you get that correct and do not get points deducted in your writing? Have I remembered to refer to the authors by last name only after I have introduced them fully in my very first introductory paragraph? So this is standard protocol for academic writing, my friends. And if your 1010 teacher didn't teach you this, you need to learn it now. So if I'm writing about Gabriel Garcia Marquez, in my introductory paragraph, I'm going to use his full name. But after that, I'm only going to call him Marquez. I'm not going to call him Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I'm not going to call him Gabriel. I'm not going to call him Mr. Marquez. I'm going to call him Marquez because that elevates me and makes me look like a professional college level writer. Have I used literary present tense? Now, this is probably going to be a new idea for almost all of us because this may be your first experience with writing about literature. So when you're writing about literature, fiction, drama, poetry, creative writing, there's sort of a rule, an unspoken rule here. Since literature can be read again and again and again, the stories and the characters always exist in perpetuity. And so we use present tense when we're talking about the characters and their actions and their words. So here's an example. The spatial setting of girl is unknown, and the mother seems stern and uncaring. So notice how I'm staying in present tense with is and seems. I don't say the spatial setting of girl was unknown and the mother seemed stern and uncaring. I stay in literary present. Now, if I'm talking about the author's life, and you won't be doing that in this paper, but if I'm ever talking about the author's actual life and the author, obviously is deceased, or obviously the author was born 40 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever, then I'm going to use past tense when I talk about something that happened in the past in the author's life. But when I'm talking about the actual literature, the short story, the poem, the play, the film, then I'm going to use present tense when I talk about the characters. Number 9, have I used formal academic language? This is college writing, folks. This is not high school writing. So I don't use words like stuff. I don't say, the stuff in this text is great, right? I don't do stuff like that when I'm actually writing. I'm going to use elevated language. One may see that the techniques used by this writer are efficient. I'm going to elevate my language. I'm a college writer now. Do I have in-text citations, so quotations and paraphrased ideas done correctly in MLA formatting? Use your little Siegel handbook. Go to the chapter on MLA. There is a sample paper at the end of it. And all you have to do is look at it to refresh your memory on how to do this. Go to the Purdue OWL, P-U-R-D-U-E, Purdue, not Purdue, as in the Eastridge Hair Salon, but Purdue OWL from Purdue University in Indiana. They have wonderful resources for MLA. Look at the MLA resources on our page that I provided for you. Look at the sample papers. Have I been careful not to plagiarize? So I've got to document and cite all of my sources. If I don't do that, I can technically be accused of plagiarizing. And we don't want that to happen because that can destroy your college career. Have I included quotes from my chosen work or works? And remember to incorporate them smoothly by introducing them with a phrase. So here's an example. Primrose replies to Penny, and then quote, then we have the quote, then the end quote, then in parentheses, the author's last name, the page number, the end parentheses, and then the period, right? So remember the rule. If a quote appears in your essay all by itself as a sentence with no wording from you in that same sentence, you've dropped it, and you're going to get points deducted because that's considered a serious error. Even if your sentence before the quote introduces the quote, if that quote appears all by itself as a sentence with no words of yours in that sentence, you dropped it. So remember that. Do I have a fully developed intro, body, and conclusion? Have I answered the questions, so what and who cares, in my paper. So what about this text, this story? Why does it matter? Who should care about it? Why should we care, right? Why does it matter? Why does this theme connect to us? Why does this character resonate with us? And then at some point within my text, have I explained, again, this is not the main point, but this goes along with our class theme, who or what enslaves the character or characters I'm writing about, or, if applicable, how the character might enslave someone else. Now I give you possible or examples of a possible thesis and game plan for both of those options. So for option one, when you're just writing about one main character and analyzing that character, here's a possible thesis. The main character in Elie Wiesel's acclaimed text about the Holocaust, Night, is that of Wiesel himself. Written in first-person narrative style, the reader follows the story of Eliezer, called Elie, as he and his family endure the challenges of the ghetto and eventually the horrors of a concentration camp. The poignant account reveals the ways in which Elie and his family are enslaved by the hatred and racial prejudice of Nazi Germany. And here's the actual thesis. All of that was the intro. So here's the thesis. After examining Elie's words and actions, along with other characters' responses to him, one may argue that he is representative of the innocence and purity of all children whose lives and futures were robbed from them during this difficult time. One may further argue that his character reveals the text's main theme. In order to prevent such evil from ever occurring again, the world must never forget the atrocities that were committed. So you have a two-sentence thesis. First, the writer is laying out all the ways that he or she is going to look at this character and analyze him, Elie's words and actions, and other characters' responses to him. And then the character or the writer says, through looking at his own words and actions and other characters' responses, we can argue he's representative of all the children of the Holocaust. And then we have that second part of the thesis, that second sentence, that tells us that the character is revealing the main theme, and here's what it is, right? So for a thesis of that nature, you've got to offer proof within the body of your paper of Elie's innocence and his trusting nature in the beginning of the text, right? As opposed to the grim realist that he becomes as the horrors of the Holocaust unfold within his life. Because he goes from a deeply devout, sweet, innocent, pure person to a person who is seriously questioning everything. And there's little wonder, if we went through that, we might do that as well. So you need to include evidence, quotes, examples from this text of the way in which other characters respond to him, as well as quotes, paraphrases focused on his own attributes, his own words, his own reactions to what occurs. And finally, you've got to make a connection between this character and the enslavement, both literally and spiritually, psychologically, of Jews by the controlling powers of that Nazi regime. So that's one example. Here's an example for option two, where you're comparing, contrasting two different main characters. When comparing the unlikely angel in Gabriel Garcia Marquez's A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings to The Thing in A.S. Byatt's The Thing in the Forest, one may see stark differences between the characters in terms of their behaviors and effects on others. Ironically, one may also notice similarities regarding the physical features of both characters and the reactions such features provoke. Additionally, one will note that the angel seems enslaved by the inability of the humans around him to see his true inner beauty, while the thing seems to enslave others through its moral ugliness, its inclination to kill and destroy. A close comparison demonstrates that both characters reveal a common theme. Goodness and evil in our world may manifest in unlikely ways and may affect us for a lifetime. So this author did a fabulous job, the student who wrote this intro and thesis here, by comparing both of these characters and finding similarities regarding the physical features. So both of them do not look very good, right? The angel doesn't look like what we expect an angel to look like. The thing is pretty horrifying. And then similarities in terms of the idea that both are enslaved. Well, I should rephrase. One of them is enslaved, and one of them enslaves others. Um, and then finally, the writer zeroes in on this common theme that both of the texts reveal. So to create an effective paper from that kind of thesis, again, you need to demonstrate through quotes from both of the texts the sharp differences between the angel and the thing. So, for example, the angel is humble and quiet, non intrusive, and good, while the thing is loud, murderous, all consuming evil, right? You need to demonstrate the similarities too in terms of their physical appearances, the resulting repugnance of other characters to them. Both appear out of the blue, suddenly, unexpectedly. Both are ugly and frightening looking. They're mysterious, they're unexplained. Both are perceived as being repulsive by the humans who view them. So, again, you want to provide evidence of how the other characters are responding to them, as well as the descriptions, the narrative comments offered by both authors. You would need to indicate the ways in which the angel is himself enslaved. He's literally enslaved by Paleo and Elisenda. And then he's also enslaved by the fact that the human beings all around him can't see his inner beauty and the truth that he's actually an angel because he doesn't look the way they expect him to look. While you need to indicate, the ways in which the thing enslaves others. The two characters, Penny and Primrose, are haunted all their lives over their experience with the thing. So you would finally need to back up your interpretation with textual evidence that both authors are pointing toward the ways in which good and evil appear in surprising ways in our world and impact our lives very profoundly. So you see a little sentence there at the very end of this assignment sheet that tells you the student learning outcomes to be evaluated in this paper, and that goes along with our guidelines from our governing body, the TBR, the Tennessee Board of Regents. And there's an accompanying sheet in the same section here that gives you the details of those learning outcomes if you've a mind to read through them. So thanks for your patience, guys. And I realize paper one may seem a little bit overwhelming at first, but as we're going along, all of the discussion boards, all the activities we're doing are going to help to cement the ideas. Thank you.